We are live. What's up, my friends? Abbie here. Welcome to another Ask Abbie live stream. I'm so glad you guys could make it. And welcome, everyone. First things first, type in the chat. Tell me if you can see and hear me okay. Hopefully, everything is working according to plan. This is our second Ask Abbie live stream of the year. So we are doing Ask Abbie a little bit different this year in 2026. I'm trying something new and I'm really enjoying it so far. And basically it is the format of doing these questions and answers in live stream format. So instead of me answering questions in YouTube shorts and Instagram reels scattered throughout the interwebs, everything will be nice and neat and organized in one place. So the way Ask Abbie works is like this. If you're in my Patreon community and you're on the Ask Abbie tier or higher, you can submit questions at the end of the month to this show. I'm going to spend the first 20 minutes of this live stream answering as many questions as I can from the Patreon community. And then for the last 10 minutes of the live stream, we're going to open the floor to everyone in the chat, and you guys can ask me questions, and I'm going to randomly choose as many questions as I can from the chat and answer those. So first things first, tell me where you're tuning in from. I would love to hear where you're from, maybe a little bit about yourself as a writer. What is it you write? What is it you're working on? I would love to hear where you're all tuning in from. Awesome. Everyone can see me. Wonderful. Let's see. I see some writers coming in from all over the world. Awesome. So cool. Germany, Cyprus, Australia, LA, Texas, UK, Germany again, Massachusetts, Denmark. I saw someone else from South Africa. Welcome, everyone. So glad you could join this live stream. Okay, so let's get right into it. I'm going to pull up my questions from Patreon, and we're going to begin. First question is from Lana. She has two questions. How to best use and take beta reader feedback and utilize it in your editing process, especially with some of the critiques that you don't necessarily agree with. I get this question a lot, and it's difficult to know how to take beta reader feedback. So understandable confusion. I would say, first and foremost, limit how many beta readers you're asking advice or asking for feedback from. If it's like 2 to 3, that's perfect, because you can then gain a general consensus of what this feedback is. So do people agree with each other without even knowing it? Like, is more than one person highlighting a problem area? If so, then that's worth looking at. But if it's just one person who maybe doesn't like something about the book, it's not necessarily an indication that it's a problem. It could just be that person's preference. So important to notice the patterns. I would say notice the patterns first and foremost. And your second question is, do you write the first draft in its entirety without fear of pacing and edit what's not needed later? How do you get out of your head in order to do this? It can be difficult for sure. And what I do is I try to write however much I want to in that first draft. And I tend to write a lot. I tend to be long-winded with my first drafts. And usually what the editing process looks like for me is going back and just cutting. I just cut a lot of unnecessary stuff. And that's, I think, the sign of your writing getting to a place where you're at a different level now, and you're at the level of just polishing instead of having to rewrite things. Because if you have too much, then it's easier to edit. You can just cut away. You can just get rid of the unnecessary stuff. Same with, like, explaining too much internal conflict. We can just cut away some of it and it might be perfect. You know that you have entered, you've unlocked the next level of the video game of writing when you're at that place where you just are cutting away. So don't be afraid to just overwrite and then cut away. Because the more tricky way to edit and to have to revise is when you don't have enough, right? It's always more difficult when you don't have enough and you're like, okay, I have to go back to the drawing board and make more story. So that's how I do it. Next question is from Mark. Hi, Abbie. How do you get over the line to put pen to paper or fingers on keyboard when you have reams of research but daren't pull the trigger to execute the story? Really good question. And this is, I think, in most cases, just a matter of trusting yourself. It is for me anyway. trusting myself enough to let myself just jump into that first draft and explore and play and have fun. It doesn't have to be perfect right away. You just have to have enough confidence to take that first step. And this is something that I talk about on my channel with the staircase method. Some of you might have heard me mention that before. And the staircase method is basically a method of outlining, or a way I like to look at outlining, of do we really need to see the whole staircase or just the next few steps? And if you can see the next few steps, you can start writing. You can feel confident enough to dive into that first draft without having to see the entire thing. And as far as research goes, it sounds like you've done tons of research. You said you have reams of research. So that's a lot of research. And I think that sometimes the more we research and the more we prepare, the more we can intimidate ourselves about the process of writing in general. And you don't necessarily need to even do all the research before you start. Like, research the big stuff, yes, the stuff that cannot change, but the little stuff that can change, like, just dive in and change it later. That would be my advice. Next question is from Catherine. Hi, Abbie. How would I know what's enough detail to write in my story, especially when my female main character is experiencing something in front of her and in situations? So this is kind of the bread and butter of writing in general, is knowing how much detail to include of what's happening versus why it matters, right? What's happening externally versus what's happening inside the character's head. And that is a delicate balance that you're going to learn through just practicing, just time, and more of it, writing and writing and writing. And eventually you will have that switch flip in your brain and something will click and you'll be like, okay, I can feel the balance. And until you feel the balance, I would go back to that previous advice I gave with writing too much. Err on the side of writing too much detail of the internal thoughts and the action. And then later, when you come back to it to revise and edit, just cut away. Cut away anything that feels redundant. Cut away anything that feels like it's slowing down the pacing. And you might find that you have a better perspective on that pacing when you come back later, more so than when you're in the first draft. Next question is from Laura. Hi, Abbie. I'm starting to worry that I go too far into my main character's thoughts and introspection, and maybe I'm not leaving enough space for the reader to interpret things on their own. How do you usually find the right balance? So that's kind of similar to the question that I just answered, but a little bit different in that we are maybe looking too much into the character's head, that we're having a little bit of a white room situation where we don't see everything that's happening on the page or around us, the action of the scene. And I would say for me, how I find this balance is I try to cut away what I can in the revision process, because sometimes in the first draft, there is just too much introspection. And you need that distance and time to go back and see that there is too much introspection. So I wouldn't overthink it too much in the first draft, but if you're trying to refine your process and find that balance in the first draft, I would say maybe if you feel you're doing it too much, err on the side of not doing it as much. Like, stop yourself mid-sentence. Just see what happens. Stop yourself mid-sentence next time you go into your character's head and you start to introspect and dive deep into their thoughts. What if you only left like the first 2 lines of that and kept it mysterious and just ended it? Like, maybe you're going to go into a flashback, and instead of going to a full flashback, you just give us like a taste, like 1 line, 2 lines. We see a tiny glimpse of her past, but we don't see the whole picture. Like, what would happen? Just experiment with that a little bit. And maybe making it more minimal will make it actually say more, less is more, that kind of concept. Next question is from Lete. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Hi, Abbie. I have a few very important side characters in my book, but we never get their point of views, and I'm worried their arcs will fall flat. So do you have any tips on writing non-point of view character arcs? That's a great question. And this is really a side character development, right? Side character arcs. And side characters can be so powerful and bring a great character arc to your story. I have a couple videos on side characters, and I have a whole live training on them as well. If you want to check that out, that's in my Patreon. But adding a character arc for a side character is really just about understanding their conflict and then showing us their conflict through interactions with the point of view character. Okay, so you can expedite this if the side character is close to the main character, and that way they can talk to the main character about what they're dealing with personally, conflicts they're going through, or maybe their conflicts directly impact the main character. And so we get sort of a front row seat to what's happening to the side character without going into their head and seeing their perspective. We don't have to. Genuinely, we do not have to see their perspective to see what conflict they're going through and what they're dealing with. So I would sit down and ask yourself, like, of these side characters, these few important ones, what conflicts are they dealing with? And are they going to have a little bit of a transformation throughout the story? And if so, how? Like, how is that going to unfold? What is that going to look like for them? And can we show that progression happening through interactions with the main protagonist? And sometimes you can have both sides too. So maybe you have more than one main protagonist and you're switching point of view. You can see the side character from both those other characters' perspectives. That's something to explore as well. Nikki asked, I'm curious, when using the enneagram for your main characters, do you decide what they are just by checking the list of attributes, or do you give each one a test? You could do a test for each one. I have become such a nerd for the enneagram at this point that, like, I know all the types so well and their attributes so well that as soon as I start brainstorming a new character, I pretty much know what type they're going to be. So I don't really have to take the test at this point because I just, like, know all the types so intrinsically. But if you feel like the best way to get to know them is to take the test, then it can be really fun to take the test as them. But sometimes it's better just to start with your character before you even decide what their enneagram type is and start developing their conflicts and then see which type does this naturally lean to? And do I want to maybe explore a different conflict? Would this type be a good vehicle to explore that conflict? Let's see. I'm trying to find the next question here. Lucy Jude asked, hey, Abbie, how does specific desire, fear, misbelief need to be? How specific does it need to be? For example, my main character's desire is to get home and his fear is dying. Are simple things like that good enough, or do I also need a more personal one? I love this question because you know what I always say, do or die is not strong enough for conflict. Here's what I mean. We all are ingrained with survival mechanisms, right? We all have self-preservation mechanisms built into our psyche. So none of us want to die, right? We all want to survive. We all want to see the next day. So I would say, because you're thinking about this, you already know the answer. The answer is there is something deeper beneath this and you need to dig down into it. So it can be tricky, especially when we have like a high stakes story and it's like do or die. And it seems like the biggest possible worst thing imaginable, right, would be for this character to die. But what does survival mean to them? That's what I would start asking yourself. Like, what will they do if they survive? And the answer to that question can help to strengthen their conflict so much, it's even more powerful than do or die, right? Because we all have survival instincts. But if you give this character a layer deeper than the survival instinct, that's, I need to survive because of this, or I need to get home because of this. What does he lose if he doesn't get home? Something to think about, something to dig down and find in that other layer of internal conflict. Because while those do or die circumstances on the surface can be exciting in the moment, what will make us really care and empathize with this character is their reasons for survival. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that sparks some new ideas. Next question is from William, who says that he's been working on some different projects and like not really finding the one that's clicking. And it boils down to what is my suggestion for remaining focused on the first book until completion? So staying focused on one project, it can be difficult for sure. especially when you have so many ideas and they're pulling you in all these different directions. I know the feeling, but I do feel like having passion for your project is important. Like you need to have the passion for your project. You need to wake up every morning excited to work on it. So if your current work in progress just isn't doing that for you, then maybe try something else. And maybe you're meant to pivot. Maybe you're not meant to stay on this one path and see it through to completion. However, it depends on the writer. So if you're a writer who you find yourself constantly uprooting just because you feel uncomfortable committing to one thing or you get anxious committing to one thing, maybe it would be a good idea to finish something, but make it lower commitment, like make it shorter, make it like a short story or a novella or something that is manageable and doesn't feel like this mountain that you have to climb, right? So if you're like really hungry for that sense of accomplishment and focus and you just want to stay the course with something manageable, attainable, and then move on to something that really, sets your heart on fire. Of course, ideally we want that for every project, but sometimes you're just like, I need to see this out to the end. And if that's you, if you feel like I need to see this out to the end, I keep uprooting myself and it's like a form of self-sabotage, then maybe just commit to it and stay focused even through the tough days, even when it feels tedious. And you'll be really glad that you did because you'll have that sense of accomplishment. Next question is from Julia. I would like to read the novels you write with Kate, but you can't find them under our pen name together. Yeah, okay, so this is a little more book related specifically, but I am really excited to share the novels that me and Kate are co-writing, but we're still in the writing process. We have not published them yet. So we're still in like the revision process. Those books, we've written 3 of them, and we're kind of looking at restructuring a little bit of the story to make it more fitting with our original vision for the series. So there's a lot of work still to be done on that, but don't worry, those books are coming and I'm really excited to share them with you guys. Let's see, next question is from, I really hope I pronounced your name right, but I apologize in advance if I don't, Guillermo Calderon. Hello, Abbie. I have some questions. First, can I include multiple subplots in one scene card? Yes, absolutely. You can keep them as brief or as long as you want to. I think the main function of the scene card is just to make sure that your story is always moving forward. So anything that you are including there to move the plot lines forward and to move your character's conflict forward, do what works for you. Second, if your story has more than one protagonist, does it mean that you have to write multiple 3-act story structures, one per protagonist? Definitely not. So I often write multiple protagonists and I don't do separate 3-act story structures. What I do is at each story beat of the 3-act structure, I make sure I'm checking in with both characters and I'm moving both their conflicts and their arcs forward at each story beat. So you can do this in one line, one paragraph, or you could do like separate outlines for them if you really wanted to. I like to kind of keep everything in one place so that it doesn't get disorganized. And what I like to do is make a section at the bottom of my 3-act story structure that's just quick bullet points. And in those bullet points, I will be able to see just one line at a glance that both characters' stories are moving forward. So we're not getting stuck and we're not just focusing on one character. And seeing that bullet point list can help to sort of see it from a 1,000-foot view and not have to like go back and make a whole new structure for this separate character. So that's personally how I do it. I've had a lot of people ask me this question, so I feel like maybe it's worth making a video about this sometime. Next question, I'm going to try to grab the rest of them if we can, is from Schubert's B. Hi, Abbie. I know I've been an avid reader. I'm sorry. I know being an avid reader is always good for writing, but is it still okay to be a writer, even though you don't read a ton? I find it difficult to come across books I enjoy and mostly have books I thoroughly enjoy rereading. 100 Days of Sunlight is one of them. Oh, thanks. And my writing goals tend to be more about creating books I like to read rather than creating stories for other people. But since I don't devour books constantly, like most writers, I'm starting to wonder if I'm really hardwired to be a writer. This is a common doubt that a lot of writers have. And I've known writers who are not big readers, and they are still every bit a legitimate writer. So do not let that give you any self-doubt at all. You enjoy stories in different formats. You probably enjoy watching film and TV more than reading books. Maybe not, but that's just a guess. And the thing is, we are hardwired to understand and tell stories. That's how our brains work. Our brains are designed to understand and tell stories. That is just how we're born. And that form of storytelling can take many different shapes, many different forms. So don't be hard on yourself about not reading enough books. I genuinely think that if you're not a big reader, you can still be a great writer, and you can still expand your vocabulary in different ways. You don't have to read books to expand your vocabulary. And understanding conflict and characters is not just limited to the format of reading books. So maybe some other writers in the chat need to hear this today, but you don't have to be a big reader to be a great writer. We have come to 20 minutes here on the live stream. I haven't answered all the questions in Patreon. There's a few left, but I want to get to some questions in the chat because I said I would open up the chat at the last 10 minutes of this live stream. So if I didn't answer your question on Patreon, I'm going to answer that question in like written text. So go back to your question on Patreon. If I didn't get to in the live stream, you'll find an answer on the Patreon post. Okay, I'm going to pull some questions from the chat now. First, let's see. A couple super chats came in. Thank you to Sam I Am from the super chat for the super chat. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the congrats on Snapshots of Sunlight. If you guys haven't already grabbed your copy, the link is below in the description. Just putting that out there. Okay, another super chat came in from Richard Baranowski. You asked, hey, Abbie, I'm writing a conversation scene. It's an important character growth moment for the main male character. The scene is 3 pages long so far, and I'm still not done yet. How long is too long? Like I said, I'm a very long-winded writer. I don't think there's any such thing as too long if you feel that you are pacing the scene in a natural way, in a way that needs to be, like, it needs to be written this way. You know, I sometimes psych myself out with word count. I'm like, oh, it's going to be too long. But really, the most important thing is this. Did you tell the story you wanted to tell? Do you feel confident that the scene unfolded in a natural, emotional, compelling way? If that's the case, then your reader's going to be hooked. They're going to be interested in what they're reading. They're not even going to be paying attention to how long it is, right? And another thing you can think about, if you're like, oh, this is too long, or this chapter is now like 10, 15 pages long because of this super long scene, maybe consider adding a chapter break. It's amazing how just a simple chapter break, even if we're going to the same character's point of view in the next chapter, that can like snap the reader back into focus and keep them reading longer than they would have if they were confronted with a longer chapter. This is just something I've noticed in myself. It's like perceived progress and minimal commitment when you have a bunch of short chapters, and they really could just be stitched together into one long chapter. But my brain is like, wow, I'm making so much progress. I'm reading so quickly, and it's just an illusion. So maybe consider like making a chapter break. That might make you feel better about the scene, might make it flow better. Just a suggestion there. Let's see. Oh, my chat. Sorry, my chat is not loading properly. Okay. Gabe Wanderer 322 asked, would you have any advice on how to write or edit faster? I think I'm really slow, even when I'm not being a perfectionist. Yeah, this is definitely a tricky area, especially when you find it's like inconsistent. And that's the case a lot of times I find with myself is like some days I'll write faster, some days I'll write slower. And you can't always control the flow of creativity or how quickly it comes to you. So I would say there are things you can do to optimize the creativity, but you can't make yourself write faster. If you're a slower writer, maybe just embrace that, but set up parameters that you won't have other things slowing you down. So for myself, what I do is I carve out specific time each day to write. It's always the same. I let everybody in my house know this is my writing time so they know not to interrupt me if they can. And I try to prepare things ahead of time. Like I prepare any work that needed to be done during that time. I prepare that the following or the previous day, so I don't have to think about that to-do list while I'm sitting down to write. Maybe prepare your space ahead of time so you're not cleaning up and doing chores in the time that you're supposed to be writing. Basically optimizing all the distractions, putting your phone on silent, doing anything you can to make that space and that time be as optimized as possible. And I think you'll find that when the distractions go away, it's actually the ideas come faster. Another super chat came in from David Lewis. Do you have a tried and true method for shooting down book ideas you don't want to pursue or limiting ideas to a manageable level? We kind of talked about this a tiny bit earlier, but shooting down book ideas that you don't want to pursue, I would still write them down. Like I do that all the time. I get a lot of ideas. I just write them down and put them all in my Notion, and maybe I'll visit them some other time. But I try to keep myself on the path of thinking about the longevity of my career, for lack of a better word, and thinking about like what is the avenue that I really want to be pursuing this year, this season. And is that next book project supporting that path for you? So maybe, you want to long term be a historical mystery writer, but you keep having these ideas for like contemporaries and sci-fi and fantasy, and that doesn't serve the path that you want to be on as a historical mystery writer. So maybe if that's really the path that you feel called to and you want to continue to pursue that path, maybe just focus on the ideas that fall into that genre or fall into that category or could be accepted or attractive to the same audience. So thinking about things like that, I think will help to make you not feel like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions. It helps me anyway. Hopefully that helps. Another question came from Josh Gillum, 167, with a super chat. Thank you so much. Hey, Abbie, how would you recommend giving constructive criticism to someone who generally hasn't gotten any criticism? That can be tricky. I would say first, making sure that it is constructive, making sure that you have enough positive things to say so it doesn't feel like you're just like hitting them with criticism right away, especially if you feel that maybe they're going to be sensitive to criticism. Find enough things that you can build them up as well as like critiquing what they did, what they wrote. And some people just will never take criticism well at all, no matter how much you sugarcoat it. So you definitely don't want to overthink this too much. But especially if it's somebody who they trust you and they know that you want what's best for them, they know you want to see them succeed, right? And if you can like underscore that, even better, because that makes your criticism, your constructive criticism, come from a place of growth, right? You're not trying to like tear them down. You're trying to see them succeed. So I would say like make sure you have a healthy balance of positive and critical feedback, and try to boost up their strengths. Show them where they can be confident in their writing, not just where they need improvement. Let's see, I'm going to try to grab the rest of these here. Chelsea Loves Plants gave a super chat. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm writing third person dual point of view. They have different dialects. Would you have narrator reflect their dialogue style, how they refer to people, etc.? I love bringing character voice into the narration. I think it really adds a lot of interest to the prose itself. And it makes the character feel like you're actually in their head. You're seeing things how they see things, and that's really important for character voice. But there is a limit to it, like as far as dialect goes, like how they speak, or maybe like their accent or something. You don't necessarily want to exaggerate that too much in the narrative because it can be distracting. Okay, if you can imagine like an extreme example of it, it would be distracting. So I guess like find a balance there where we still have a little bit of their voice and how they see the world, but the narrative structure itself is not distracting. It's easy to read. Basically, that's your goal. Still making it easy to read so that we are just flowing from one sentence to the next and not thinking too much or backtracking or rereading. But yes, absolutely bring their voice into the narrative. That's going to be a great way to make them feel lived in. Another super chat came in. Hi, Abbie. How do you write a standalone? Every single time that I've planned a standalone, I either get too attached to the characters or I have so many ideas, I start thinking about making a series. That's a great question. And honestly, is that a downside? Like I've always had the opposite problem where I always just think of ideas for standalones. Like in recent years, I've been thinking more about series, but it can be difficult to think about, like to have enough ideas to spin out into a series. And series can have so much potential. So maybe don't try to stop that process for you. I don't know. It's hard to say because like I understand there are definitely benefits to writing standalones. Maybe you can find a happy medium. Like maybe you could turn your ideas into a standalone series or interconnected standalones, as they are sometimes called, where you have these books that all take place in the same universe, but they can all be read as standalones. That to me is like the best of both worlds because you can market each book as a new book. You don't have to have reader follow through for every single book in the series chronologically. And you can basically have the freedom of standalones, but have the benefit of people who have read the first book will be more interested, more likely to read the second book because they've already fallen in love with those characters from the first book. So an example of that might be you have a series about like four brothers and each brother becomes the protagonist across four of those books. So I've seen this done a lot in the romance genre, but something to play with, something to think about. I'm going to grab one more question here before we wrap up the live stream. Loves to read books. Asked, how do you stay focused on editing your book? Because I just want to start writing the next one. I feel like this is a common struggle and a good question to end on because we've all struggled with this, right? Editing is not fun. And a lot of times we get anxious about like wanting to write the next book while we're still editing this one. I've definitely felt that way. And I think one of the best ways to mitigate this for myself is to be brainstorming or outlining a new project while you're editing. So you're not writing a first draft, you're not splitting your attention that much, but you're still allowing yourself to kind of play in a different story world while you're editing, because editing is a very cerebral kind of technical process, and it can be draining to your creativity for sure. So maybe find a different outlet for your creativity. Maybe allow yourself to explore a new idea, but not fully commit to it yet while you're still editing. That's something I do a lot, and I know it helps me, so hopefully it helps you as well. Okay, guys, that is a wrap for today's Ask Abbie live stream. Thank you so much for joining me today. If I didn't answer your question, I would love to answer it still. So you can guarantee that I will answer your question by joining my Patreon at the Ask Abbie level or higher. The link to that is below this video. When you see the Ask Abbie post go up at the end of the month, make sure you post your question as a comment, and I will get to it either in the live stream or I will write you a response in text format, which I'm going to go do on those last few questions on the post after we wrap up this live stream. But I'm all out of time today. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you the best of luck with your writing. And also, I forgot to mention, guys, my new book, Make Your Story Matter. I finally have a copy to hold. It's so exciting. This book is the culmination of everything I have taught on this channel for the past 7 years, and I am so stoked to share it with you. It is now available everywhere books are sold online, soon to be available in bookstores, libraries, August 2026. The link is below this live stream. So if you haven't pre-ordered already, there's going to be some great bonuses for you guys. I want you to check it out. The link is below. Thank you so much for supporting what I do here on my channel. I will see you in the next live stream. Until then, happy writing. And as always, rock on.